Hey guys, last weekend I played a 2-day Scrabble tournament in Charlottesville, Virginia, and many crazy things happened during that event. But nothing nearly as crazy as what happened in round 7. And no, I'm not referring to the impressive 10-letter bingo I played of alacrities through a disconnected la and e on the board, which I did make a short on, by the way, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. But something even crazier happened that same round in a game played in the second division between two experienced tournament players. That game was over within just about 1 minute after it started, which is absolutely absurd, and I know you guys are probably really confused, so let me explain how this possibly happened. The game was played between Tina Yates and Nancy Bowen, and you're probably looking at your screen now and screaming, wait, Tina actually had 7 eyes on her rack to open the game? No, she didn't have 7 eyes, but I don't actually know what her and Nancy's racks were for the first couple of turns, so I'm just going to be using these eyes as placeholders. In any case, Tina was first and opened with an exchange of 4 tiles. Nancy responded also by exchanging 4 tiles, so that is 2 exchanges so far. Tina again had an unknown rack, and this time her rack was a little bit better than before, but still had a couple tiles she didn't like, so she exchanged 2. Nancy also exchanged 2. So there, guys, we are at 4 consecutive exchanges. It is now Tina's turn for the 5th play of the game. And Tina once again exchanged 2. Now, if you guys are keeping track at home, that is the 5th consecutive exchange to start the game. There's a rule in Scrabble that at any point during the game, if there are 6 consecutive 0 scores, so that can be exchanges, passes, or phonies challenged off the board, then the game ends immediately. And after the game ends, both players subtract the total point value that's currently on their rack, and the final score stands. So, that means if Nancy scores 0 points on this turn, the game is going to end. And now I do know Nancy's rack. She had AEGISST. Now, Nancy knows that Tina just exchanged 2, but of course she doesn't know what Tina has on her rack. And there's a good deal of uncertainty because she just drew 2 tiles from the bag and they could be basically anything. One interesting option for Nancy here could be to pass, because again, if she passes, that'll be the 6th consecutive 0 score and the game will end. Nancy has a fairly low scoring rack. She does have 6 1-pointers and the 2-point G, so Nancy would then finish the game with a score of -8. However, keep in mind that Tina has just exchanged 2 tiles 2 turns in a row. And generally, an exchange 2 signals a good bingo rack, which is usually going to consist of 1-point tiles, and Tina may even have a blank. So unless Tina drew some high point tiles out of the bag on her trade 2, then there's a good chance Tina will have fewer points on her rack than Nancy, which would result in her winning the game if Nancy were to score 0 here and the game were going to end. So the best option for Nancy would probably be to just play one of her 2 valid bingos, which would be either Ageists or Sagiest. So what did Nancy do here? She did bingo, but unfortunately she didn't play one of the 2 valid bingos. She played the phony of gassiest, spelled G-A-S-I-E-S-T. Now, gassiest is of course a word, but it is spelled G-A-S-S-I-E-S-T. So, after this play, Tina needs to be a little bit careful. Because remember, if Tina challenges this off the board, then the game is going to end because that will be a 6th consecutive 0 score. So it's now important to know what Tina's rack was. At this point, Tina had the word stunner with a blank E, so she had S-T-U-N-N blank R. And again, the reason that's so important is if Tina were to have more points on her rack than the letters on Nancy's rack, which of course Tina now knows given that Nancy just revealed all of them, then Tina could not challenge this. Let's say, for instance, Tina's last tile, instead of being an R, were an F. Tina knows that Nancy has a total of 8 points on her rack, the 2-point G plus 6 1-point tiles. But if Tina had S-T-U-N-N blank F, then she would have 9 total points on her rack. So if Tina were to challenge this phony off the board, she would lose by 1, with Nancy finishing with -8 and Tina finishing with -9. However, of course, Tina did not have an F. As I mentioned, she had an R as her last tile. So her point total on her rack was now 6 because she had 6 1-pointers and a blank. And Tina was aware of this and thus made the correct decision here, which was to challenge Nancy's phony off the board and end the game on the spot. So after Nancy's play came off the board, once again, both players subtracted the total point total from their rack. So Tina lost 6 and Nancy lost 8, and the game ended with a final score of -6 for Tina and -8 for Nancy. So Tina won this game by 2 points. And like I said earlier, guys, this game finished, I think, in just about a minute, maybe 2 minutes at most. And normally tournament Scrabble games take at least half hour, if not closer to 40 or 50 minutes to finish. So as you can imagine, when these two players finished their game and were walking around the playing room, the entire rest of the tournament was extremely confused as to what could have possibly happened. So just a really, really crazy sequence of events. And it begs the question, how often does this happen in tournament Scrabble? It's not too rare to see a 6-pass situation late in a game, especially if it's a really closed board and both players can't legally play any tiles in the endgame. But it's extremely rare to see a 6-pass to start the game and both players finish with negative scores with no words whatsoever on the board. Tina, myself, and Seth Lipkin, who runs the crosstables.com website, which tracks Scrabble tournament history, did some data analysis, and it turns out that this is the 24th time in recorded North American Scrabble tournament history that this has happened. As you guys can see from this table, this game played between Tina and Nancy was the first instance of an opening 6-pass in North American tournament Scrabble in 2024. Going back to 2009, when the first instance of this happened, as recorded on Cross Tables, it seems to happen typically about a couple times per year on average, which is pretty rare but definitely not unheard of. It's interesting to note that all of the names appearing on this table are different with one notable exception. It's none other than Matthew O'Connor, a very strong expert player who has actually been on the winning end of this twice. Once, in 2015, as you guys can see, he won a game by a score of -7 to -18, and he did it again 8 years later, last year in 2023, winning a game by a score of -6 to -11. One of the most famous instances of this happening is the game played between experts Marlon Hill and Ben Schoenbrunn in 2010, which I actually covered a while ago on my channel, and so did fellow Grandmaster and content creator Will Anderson. It was really hilarious. Marlon phonied several times, and Ben ended up trading and pulling high point tiles and lost with a score of a whopping -16. So definitely check that one out if you haven't already. But yeah, it's always super bizarre and entertaining when you see a Scrabble game where you're used to players scoring like 3, 4, maybe even 500 points, end with a score of something like -6 to -16 or -6 to -8. It's just always so strange when you look at a scoreboard or a player profile to see this list of 300s, 400s, and in the middle of that somewhere is a -6. Like, it's just, like, you know what happened. There's no other way for this to happen in Scrabble other than an opening 6-pass, but it's still rare enough that you can't help but do a double take and laugh a little bit when you see it. So really hope you guys got a kick out of this and enjoyed this video. Thanks as always to all of you for your support and your comments, and thanks as well to Tina and Nancy for giving me the details of this game and allowing me to make a video on it. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks as always, guys, and let me know what you think, and I look forward to seeing you soon for the next one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.